We're entering a moment most people are going to miss completely. And it's not because it's hidden on purpose, just because nobody has actually pointed a camera at it yet. There's a small group of people who are making more in a single month than most professionals make in a year. They're working from their phone, they're working from their laptop, they don't have a finance background, they don't have a license, and there's no employees. I want to show you exactly how, because I've spent the last 10 years on the other side of the exact transactions they're closing. So if you've clicked on this, it's because some part of you is looking for a real way to build income outside of your job that probably has a ceiling on it. So stick with me because I'm going to walk you through exactly what this is, why it works, why almost nobody knows about it, and how you could realistically start. Before I go any further, I want to be straight with you about something. Just because I've personally financed $300 million in equipment deals, it doesn't mean you're going to do that same thing overnight. I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is instant or guaranteed because that's not honest. And I'd rather you trust every word I say than get excited for 5 minutes. What I can tell you with complete confidence is that the people that you're going to hear about, regular people, no finance background, are using the exact same model I'm going to walk you through here today. So I know someone, Derek, he was a truck driver, learned this business, zero finance experience, closed his first deal in under 60 days, made $7,300. A woman who was working part-time at a medical clinic with literally no idea the industry existed 3 months earlier, closed 2 deals in 2.5 months, combined $15,000. One of my students was 2 weeks into learning this when he had a $1.5 million deal in process. One deal. Another closed 5 deals in his first 4 months with a total revenue of $26,500 in commissions. Smallest one being $2,800, biggest one being $8,900. So before I get into how, I want you to know what you're about to see isn't theory. It's happening right now with people who started exactly where you are today. My name is Neil.Finance. I'm a chartered accountant who spent over a decade on the lending side with equipment finance. Reviewing and approving broker submissions inside of a bank, I was the one cutting the check for them. I personally financed over $300 million in equipment in construction, medical, transportation, manufacturing, and even aviation as well. And about halfway through my career, I noticed something that changed everything for me. The broker submitting the deal to me, the ones on the other side of the table, those are the people that are actually making more money. They're making the big bucks. Some of them significantly more than I was. And most of them didn't have a finance background at all. And that observation is the reason why this video exists. So let's actually get into it because there's a reason almost nobody is talking about this business. And there's a reason most people trying to build income online are picking the wrong business model entirely. So if you're trying to build a real income stream right now, you're probably looking at a handful of different options. Drop shipping, stock trading, or crypto, affiliate marketing, maybe coaching, maybe you thought about real estate or mortgage brokering. All these get talked about constantly and all of them can technically make you money. But nobody evaluates these models on the metrics that actually matter for someone starting from zero. So let's actually do that properly, side by side, using 6 things that determine whether a business model is realistic for a beginner. Unitary gain, how much you make per transaction. Startup capital, how much money do you need to actually begin? Speed to first dollar, how long before you see your first real payment? Skill requirement, how much do you need to learn before you can execute? Fulfillment complexity, how hard is it to actually deliver once someone says yes? Scalability, whether you can grow this without simply working more hours. So let's start with drop shipping. Unitary gain, let's say $20 to $50 per sale. To hit $10,000 a month, you need 200 to 500 sales. That's a lot of volume. Startup capital, 5,000 I would say minimum, because you got to test products, run ads, and that money can disappear pretty quickly if you don't know what you're doing. I've talked to people who have tested 20 different products before finding one that actually worked. Speed to first dollar is usually 3 to 6 months of trial and error. Skill requirement actually is quite high. You need to understand paid ads, product research, customer service, supplier logistics, all that at once. Fulfillment is medium complexity. You're not holding inventory, but you're dealing with shipping delays and supplier issues that are constantly coming up. And scalability gets harder the bigger you get because your ad cost climbs and your margins shrink. Now let's do trading in crypto. Here's the honest truth about unitary gain in trading. It's not really definable because one trade can make you $200 to $500 and the next one you lose $3. There's no predictable per transaction number, which makes this fundamentally different from a real business model. Startup capital, 5,000 to 10,000 minimum. If you want to trade with any meaningful size, and probably more, which means you need money to make money, a tough starting point for most people. Speed to first dollar can be fast, sometimes a single day, but you can lose your first dollar just as fast. Skill requirement is genuinely the hardest of any model on the list. I can count on my one hand the number of people I personally know who consistently lost money over the years trading. Fulfillment and scalability, there's none, because there's no product to deliver. But none of that matters if the core skill takes years to develop and you never get there. Now let's do affiliate marketing. Unitary gain, somewhere between $50 to $250 per sale. The startup capital is going to be $1,000 to $5,000 for ads or audience building. Speed to first dollar, probably 2 to 4 months, while you figure out what actually converts. Skill requirement is going to be high. Marketing, copywriting, paid traffic, or organic content skills. Fulfillment is generally easy here. The product owner handles delivery, but scalability is medium at best because you need to constantly increase traffic, and 60 to 90% of your revenue typically goes straight back into ads. Out of 10,000 in sales, you might keep 1,000 to 4,000. Now let's talk about something closer to home for a lot of people watching this, and that's probably going to be mortgage brokering or real estate. These are both respected, legitimate paths, and I'm not here to bash them, but look at the actual metrics. Startup capital is going to be high. You got licensing, courses, exam fees, continuing education. It's going to be around $1 minimum to $3,000 just to get your license before you even earn a dollar. Speed to license and closing your first transaction, that's probably going to be slow, often 4 to 6 months, because you also have to build a client base for nothing in a saturated, heavily marketed industry. Skill requirement includes passing a state license exam, which is a real barrier most people underestimate. Commission structure on mortgage deals typically run 1 to 2%, and that's been compressed for the years as the market gets more competitive. Scalability is very limited by sheer number of licensed competitors already in your area, all chasing that same buyer. So now let's build what the ideal model would actually look like using these 6 metrics. Before I tell you what it is, unitary gains should be high enough that a handful of transactions changes your month. Let's say a minimum $3,000 to $7,000, $8,000 per transaction. Startup capital, close to zero would be ideal because you shouldn't have to risk money you don't have just to start. Speed to your first dollar should be realistic, 30, 90 days. Fast enough to know quickly if this is going to work for you, not fast that it's hype. Skill requirements should be learnable in weeks, not years, and shouldn't require a state license or multi-year credentials. Fulfillment should be straightforward, no inventory, no employees, no products, and scalability should compound, meaning deals and relationships you build this month should make next month easier, and next month easier, not harder. If you build this model on paper, here's what you get. A business where you connect business that needs equipment, construction companies, medical practices, trucking, fleet, to lenders who finance the equipment. You'll get paid a commission every time a deal funds. There's no license, no employees, no inventory, and you can run the entire thing from your phone or laptop. Now this is called equipment finance brokering, and has been quietly running in the background of the American economy for decades. The reason you've never heard of it, it's not because it's small. There's over 30 million small businesses in the United States, and a meaningful percentage of them need equipment to operate and grow. But it's because people doing this never needed an audience or a course to make money at it. They just built relationships and collected checks. Here's how it actually works, plainly. You have a construction company, they want to buy an excavator. There's a $300,000 piece of equipment that they can't pay cash for. A trucking company needs 4 new trucks at $150,000 to $200,000 each. A medical practice needs a new imaging machine or laser system. That's easily in the 6 figures. None of these businesses are paying out of pocket. They need financing. Most of them are going to go to the bank first, and most of them are going to get declined. It's not because their business is bad, but because the traditional banks are structurally built to minimize risk, which means they say no to a huge percentage of legitimate businesses that simply don't fix their box. A new business and industry that bank doesn't like, slightly higher debt load, any of these can mean an automatic decline at a major bank, even for a healthy growing company. And that decline is not the end of the story for the business. It's the beginning of an opportunity for you, because there's an entire layer of alternative lenders who specialize in exactly the deals traditional banks turn away. And the person who connects the business that needs equipment to the lender who's willing to fund, that's the equipment finance broker. You don't lend the money yourself. You don't need to take on the risk. The lender does all that. You're the connector, the matchmaker. And when the deal funds, you get paid a commission. And that's typically between 2 to 5, even higher, 8% of the deal value. It's all about how you negotiate it. So on a $150,000 deal, you could be getting $75,000 to $15,000. On larger transactions, the number can go up. I mentioned earlier, one of my students, he did a $1.5 million deal in 2 weeks of learning this. So do the math on that and that was 2%. Most people don't even realize transactions at this scale exist outside of real estate. In equipment finance, they happen regularly. Now, here's something I need to be completely honest with you about, because I think most people teaching this industry get it wrong. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme. This is not an overnight business. You don't need a finance degree, though, and you don't need a license, but you do need to actually learn how this works. Here's the part most people, almost nobody teaches, because almost nobody teaching equipment finance has ever sat on my side of the desk. Most brokers fail not because they can't find clients. They fail because they don't understand how lenders actually evaluate a deal. They submit a good deal to the wrong lender, and it sits for 3-4 weeks and then dies, and they have no idea why. Every lender has what's called a credit box. Specific equipment types, specific industries, specific deal sizes, credit profiles, and they're comfortable with that. You submit outside that box, it doesn't matter how nice the deal is. It's going to get declined. I've reviewed thousands of broker submissions over the past decade. The brokers who constantly fund deals aren't the ones with the most clients. They're the ones that understand exactly what lenders need to see before it even hits submit. That is the single biggest gap in the entire industry right now. And it is the exact gap I built my training around, because I'm the only person teaching from the approval side rather than the broker side. And this is also why I think this is one of the most overlooked opportunities right now. Not because the business model is unproven. It's because nobody with specific vantage point that I have has ever taught it publicly before. Let me get some real specific examples to you of what this looks like when it's done correctly. So one of my students got connected with a taxi fleet operator who needed financing of 4 vehicles. Total cost was about $80,000, $90,000. He qualified the deal properly, checked the business's revenue and 4 months of bank statements he needed, matched it to the specific lender whose credit box fit the exact equipment type and deal size, and submitted that clean, complete file. That deal got accepted for funding almost immediately. That student was in his first year of brokering. He wasn't a financial professional. He's just someone who learned the process and followed it correctly. Simple, boring deal, made him money though. And that's what actually looks like in this practice. It's not theory, it's not hypothetical. It's a real transaction, a real result from someone who started with nothing but a willingness to learn. So here's the honest version of what I'm offering. I built Equipment Finance Mastery to teach this from one vantage point nobody else can offer. 10 years on the approval side of these exact deals. So inside the program, I'm going to walk you through everything from how a lender actually thinks, to how to package a submission correctly for the first time, to how to qualify the client before you spend hours on a deal that probably would not get funded. Also, to how to build vendor relationships that are going to create consistent deal flow without you ever having to cold call a stranger. You're going to get documents, applications, checklists, scripts, and these are things that took me decades to refine. You get direct access to lender relationships, so you're not starting these connections from zero. And most importantly, you get my eyes on your actual deals. The same way I'd review them if they landed on my desk at the bank before you submit them, so you're not going to be guessing. You can start understanding what actually gets approved and why. That isn't theoretical knowledge. This is actually approval criteria I use to evaluate thousands of real submissions. And it's going to be taught to you directly by the person who makes those decisions. I'm not running this as some kind of mass market funnel. I work with a limited number of people directly because I personally review submissions and I want to actually know the people that I'm working with. If this is something you're serious about, the next steps are going to be simple. There's a link below the video. You can book a call directly with myself or my team. We'll talk through where you're starting from, what that actually looked like, and for someone in your position, how it's going to work. And we'll figure out together genuinely if this is a right fit for you. And if it is not the time, I'll tell you directly, because I'd rather be honest with you than waste both of our time. Here's the thing I keep coming back to after 10 years in this industry. There's over 30 million and counting small businesses that a huge percentage of them need to get equipment to grow. Most of them are getting turned away by their banks at some point. And that gap between what these businesses need and what traditional banks are willing to give is growing. It's actually getting wider every year as lending standards get tighter. Somebody's going to be that person standing in that gap. They're going to be connecting the businesses with financing they need, and they're going to be getting a commission out of it. So the real question is whether this is going to be you, or whether you're going to be the person who watched this video, thought it sounded interesting, and went back to scrolling. If you want to actually explore this, click the link below, because we can book a call and have an honest conversation about whether this makes sense to you. I'll talk to you soon.